Aloha and Mele Kalikimaka. Welcome to Departures to Alpha Centauri, sponsored by the United Galactic Federation of Planets. My name is Merlin, and I'll be your tour guide. Today is December 8th, 2012. We are right now 13 days away from December 21st, 2012. And for those of you that have watched these programs, you know that that is a significant date. Something will happen on December 21st, 2012, in 13 days. However, this program is our Christmas program, and even though we may not make it to Christmas this year, since December 21st comes before December 25th, we'll go ahead and have a little holiday cheer regardless. And just as a reminder, Mele Kalikimaka in Hawaiian is Merry Christmas. Mele is Merry, and Kalikimaka is Christmas. The name of this program is Flossie and the Beasts. It's UGFP 4.21. Very strange name, Flossie. F-L-O-S-S-I-E. The picture behind me is of my grandparents. My grandparents were very important in my life. My biological father was killed just before I was born. My mom was a school teacher up until that time, and she was encouraged to go back to work. So, after my birth. So my grandparents raised me for several years, and during those years I became very close to them. My grandmother was a science teacher at the high school level, and by the time I was born she was retired, and she would take me on hikes on her back down in the woods behind their house. We lived in Michigan, and my grandparents had this beautiful woods that had a pond and all kinds of beautiful trees and plants and flowers. So at a very young age, I knew the names of all the trees and all the flowers down in their woods. I also learned all the birds. And by the time I was, I believe, 7 years old, I was in Cub Scouts, and for one of my merit badges, I had to identify as many birds as possible, and my mother told the scout leader that I knew 90 birds, and the scout leader just could not believe it. So I guess they got a bird book, covered up the names, and had me identify all those birds, which I guess is pretty young for a young child. But that was thanks to my grandmother and my folks. They also helped me learn all kinds of birds. We had enormous numbers of them that would pass through Michigan during the summer and the winter. So it was quite an adventure. My grandfather is the one that taught me how to magnetize screwdrivers. One of my videos called Magnetism, I demonstrate how he taught me to magnetize those screwdrivers. Take a piece of solid copper wire, insulated copper wire, and you wrap it around a screwdriver, and then you touch it to your car battery, and it makes it a super magnet. But Grandpa was the one that told me how to do that. Well, the interesting part of the story is that my grandfather, whose name was Bill, had a nickname for my grandmother. Her name was Florence, but he called her Flossie, F-L-O-S-S-I-E. And all of us in our family became very accustomed to Grandpa calling Grandma Flossie. So it was a name that I had grown up with, you might say. In 2003, my wife and I were given a name for our organization, and it's a rather long name. So the acronym, the initials from each of the letters, makes it a lot easier to say the name. And it's Flossie when you shorten it up. But in reality, it's much longer. The first word is fellowship. And according to Webster's, fellowship talks about companionship or friendly association a mutual sharing as of experience, activity, interest, etc., a group of people with the same interests, company, or brotherhood, an endowment or a sum of money paid from such an endowment for the support of a graduate student, scholar, etc., who's doing advanced study in some field, or the rank or position of a fellow in a university or college. The next word is liaison. This word means a linking up or connecting of the parts of a whole, as of military units, in order to bring about proper coordination of activities. An illicit love affair, in spoken French, the linking of words under certain conditions by pronouncing the final consonant, ordinarily silent, of one word as though it were the initial consonant of the following word, as in the phrase, and I don't know French, so I'm going to jump over it. And then the last one is cooking a thickening as of flour and butter for sauces and soups. The third word is omnipresent. This is an adjective, and it's strictly applicable only to the deity in its implication of presence in all places at the same time, and is loosely used of anything that is always present within a given sphere, such as the omnipresent spirit of competition in business. So those are our first three words. We have fellowship, liaison, and omnipresent. Let's continue. Our next word in FLOSSIE is spiritual. Spiritual is an adjective, and it's of the spirit or the soul as distinguished from the body or material matters. It's of, from, or concerned with the intellect, intellectual. It's of or consisting of spirit, not corporeal. It's characterized by the ascendancy of the spirit, showing much refinement of thought and feeling. It's of religion or of the church, sacred, devotional, or ecclesiastical, not lay or temporal. And lastly, it's spiritualistic or supernatural. The next word is spherical. This is another adjective which means shaped like a sphere, globular or globular, of a sphere or spheres, or of the heavenly spheres. And in brackets it says sometimes with astrological reference. So we're almost there. Two more words to go. The next to the last word is intuition. This is the direct knowing or learning of something without the conscious use of reasoning, immediate apprehension of understanding. Or it's something known or learned in this way. And lastly, it's the ability to perceive or know things without conscious reasoning. And our last word in FLOSSIE is enlightenment. Enlightenment is a noun, and it's an enlightening or being enlightened. And then it can be used as a verb when it's just enlighten, which means to give the light of fact and knowledge to something, reveal truths to free from ignorance, prejudice, or superstition, to give clarification to a person as to meanings, intentions, etc., to inform, and lastly, to light up. So you can now see the letters that are associated with the word FLOSSIE, and the name of our organization is the Fellowship Liaison of Omnipresent, Spiritual, and Spherical Intuition and Enlightenment. Now in this program, I won't get into specifics as to what all that means, but essentially we have an organization that's a fellowship. It's not a church, it's not a temple, it's not a synagogue, it's not a mosque, it's a fellowship. And the advantage to fellowships is that everyone can belong. we don't exclude. Unfortunately, those others often say it's our way or the highway. If you don't believe in what they believe, they don't want you. But in a fellowship, we want everybody. The next subject we come to are the beasts. As you recall, the name of this program is Flossie and the Beasts. Well, we find the beasts in the book of Revelation in chapter 13. In chapter 13, verse 1, it says, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea." Then, if we proceed down to verse 11, it says, "And I beheld another beast coming out of the earth." Well, who are these beasts? Let's see if we can figure this out. Here's a map of the Hawaiian Islands. We have the big island of Hawaii down here in the lower right. Then up to our upper left, we have the island of Maui. Across from it is Kaho'olawe. To the northwest is Molokai. Below it is Lanai. Then the island of Oahu. And finally the islands of Kauai and Niihau off to the west. Well, we're told that there's a beast that comes from the sea. So let's see if we can find this beast. Let's say the island of Hawaii is the head of this beast. And as we follow the head over to Maui, let's say the island of Maui is the shoulder of the beast, the front shoulder, and then the island of Kaho'olawe is his front leg. Then you go to Molokai to find his hip, and Lanai his back leg. Then we head on down towards Oahu, which is his tail, and all the way out to Kauai and Niihau. Well, do you kind of see something of a beast in all that? In fact, look at this beast. Here is a dinosaur. This is a Triceratops. He has a big head with all that flange sticking out. You can see why he's Triceratops, because he has 3 horns for the tri. Then he's got a big shoulder and a leg in the front, his hips and a back leg, and then his tail. Well, can you kind of see him as part of this map? There's his big head, the island of Hawaii. Then we've got his shoulder, which is Maui, and his front leg, which is Kaho'olawe. Then you've got Molokai and Lanai for his back legs, and then Oahu for his tail, and Kauai and Niihau for the remainder of his tail. So there is our beast from the sea, according to Revelation chapter 13, verse 1. Now we need to figure out who is the beast from the land. Well, I have a book that's published by the National Park, Saguaro National Park, and in it, it has satellite views of 2 of the parks that make up Saguaro National Park here in Arizona. And I want to show you specifically Tucson Mountain, which is the western part of the park. That's part of Saguaro National Park. Here is the satellite photo of Tucson Mountain, which is on the western side of the city of Tucson, and it makes up one of the 4 mountains around the Tucson area. But Tucson Mountain has a unique distinction. It's fairly long. It goes from the southeast corner all the way out to the northwest corner. And over here along this line is Interstate 10, and across Interstate 10 are the towns of Marana and the city of Tucson. The national park is in this area, down around the lower part. And then Pima County has a park up on this side, and Old Tucson Movie Studios is right about in here. Then Tucson Estates Mobile Home Park and Tucson Mountain Sanctuary, a large group of subdivisions, is in this other area. Maybe there's something else that's also associated with Tucson Mountain. Now, as you drive Interstate 10 towards Phoenix, up towards the northwest, you can actually watch the mountain disappear into the ground. This portion along here are some low hills, and they kind of dip into the ground as they head off to the northwest, until finally the last one just disappears. And in some ways, this section of Tucson Mountain looks like the tail of the Loch Ness Monster. Those of you that are into Loch Ness and Nessie may have seen pictures of the Loch Ness Monster where her tail kind of dips down into the water and finally disappears. Well, as you're driving Interstate 10 near Tucson Mountain, this mountain range does the same thing. That tail just kind of disappears down into the ground. Otherwise, it's a pretty impressive mountain range. But we're looking for a beast from the land. Revelation chapter 13 tells us there's a beast from the land. I've already shown you the beast from the sea. Let's see what we can figure out with Tucson Mountain. If we go and draw a line from the tip of the tail all the way along the back side of the mountain, we then have what you might call a backbone. And then the tail can kind of like curve around back here, and then it comes along to this group of mountains, group of hills that stretch out from our beast. And in a sense, you might say these are the back feet. Then you come up and you've got a little group of hills right here that stick out, which you might call the front feet. And then we go up and we've got a mouth right there. Well, now does this start to look like something familiar? Does it start to look like this guy? All you kids out there should recognize our friend here. This is T-Rex. This is a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And he's got a long tail, which kind of fits in with our mountain here. He's got a long back, comes up to his head. If you kind of bend his head down a little bit, his head will fit better into our picture. But there's his big mouth with his jaws and those front feet. And then, in addition, he's got the big hind feet. So our T-Rex pretty much looks just like Tucson Mountain. We have another beast, the beast from the land. Now, these two beasts are very, very important to our world today. They play a critical role in 2012. I'm not going to go into detail on what that role is, but I want to share with you the relationship between Flossie and the beasts. As I mentioned at the beginning, my wife and I were given a name for our organization back in 2003, and we had business cards made up with that name on it, FLOSSIE. During the summer of 2007, a hurricane developed east of Hawaii along the equator and was headed right for the Big Island. This was an enormous hurricane. Every so often, we get monster hurricanes that come towards Hawaii and can cause enormous damage. In 1983, we had Hurricane Eva, which hit the island of Kauai and caused massive damage. And then in 1991, we had Hurricane Iniki, which hit Oahu and also did massive damage. But in summer of 2007, we had another hurricane. And this hurricane was wavering between a Category 4 and a Category 5 storm. This hurricane was nearly 1,000 miles across from this side all the way over to this side. And to give you an idea of how big it was, up here in this left corner is the island of Hawaii. Let me draw a circle around it. Now earlier I showed you how big that island is. Here's another view of the island, except larger than this view that we have here. This view of the Big Island is maybe a fifth as big as this overhead view, but you get a perspective on how big this hurricane is. It's at least 12 to 15 times bigger than the Big Island. And the Big Island is already the biggest of all the islands in Hawaii. Well, this hurricane was bearing down on the Big Island. And the irony was, nothing was being done. We still had schools open, stores in operation. There were canoes on the beach. Nothing had really happened to prepare for this hurricane. And the problem with these giant hurricanes, Cat 4 and Cat 5 hurricanes, they have enormous power. They're the equivalent of dozens of thermonuclear bombs, the power they generate. That same summer, in 2007, a hurricane came onshore in Texas, down by Houston. It was Hurricane Ike, and it went all the way through the entire Midwest and came out up in Maine, and in the process, it did $20 billion in damage. We've also seen what Hurricane Sandy did to New Jersey just a month and a half ago. It caused massive damage. Well, Hurricane Sandy wasn't really even a hurricane. It was a tropical storm. It had downsized from a Category 1 hurricane to a tropical storm. This guy is a Category 4 hurricane, and it's bearing down on the Big Island, and nobody's doing anything. So I took it upon myself to go down to the mayor's office, and I took my business card and I said, you guys have to do something. And they looked at my business card and kind of gave me a shocked expression. And I said, I will not be responsible for any injuries or death or damage caused by this hurricane. And you know what they did? They listened. So they took me seriously and started preparing. And they ended up getting the canoes off the beach. They boarded up the businesses downtown. They closed the schools for 2 days. And then I went up to the National Park and talked to the superintendent and did the same thing with him. I showed him FLOSSIE, and I showed him my FLOSSIE business card, and he took me seriously, and they closed the National Park for the next 2 days and then hunkered down. And we all waited for the worst. A hurricane of that size and power could literally flatten our side of the Big Island. You have to understand, we're not flat. We are rising terrain. We have 2 giant mountains on our island. They're both nearly 14,000 feet. And as you head inland on the Big Island, it's all uphill. So that hurricane would have had to go up those mountains as it passed over the island, and all that energy, all those thermonuclear bombs, would have flattened everything. It would have flattened stores, flattened houses, flattened cars. There would have been enormous damage and more than likely death. But we prepared and we waited. And this monster hurricane came right at us. We could see this whole western wall of the hurricane. It was like a giant giant wall of clouds coming right at us. But here's the incredible part of the story. As soon as that hurricane touched the Big Island over here on the southeast side, it vanished. It went away in the blink of an eye. It completely disappeared. There was nothing left of it. And the scientists were just baffled. They had never seen this happen before. All that energy, all that power went away. And all that was left was partly cloudy. It just disappeared. Nobody can explain where that hurricane went, but it vanished. And its name, as you might guess by now, was Flossie. The name of the hurricane was FLOSSIE. The Pacific Hurricane Center names hurricanes every year, and they have a list of names that they can use. And they used the name Flossie for this hurricane. So when it was headed towards my island, you can see why I was concerned. And I went down and talked to the mayor and talked to the National Park Superintendent and said, you guys got to do something. And they listened to me. They actually believed that I had something to say, and I'm glad they did. But the incredible part was, nothing happened. The hurricane vanished. It just totally disappeared. Now, for you folks that want to get a confirmation on my story, please Google the words Hurricane Flossie on Google, and you'll be able to read about it on Wikipedia. It's completely described, and they say how it just went away. It's still a mystery, but we know why it went away. That energy was put to good use. That energy did go somewhere. And the charming part of the story is that the name of that hurricane is my grandmother's nickname. My grandma Florence was Flossie. That was the name my grandfather had for her, and it was the name of the hurricane and now of our organization. And I thank you for watching. Look forward to having you back again next time. And I'd like to once again wish you all mele kalikimaka, aloha, and ahui ho. Until next time.